Today's guest on the Social Studies Show is one of the best trainers in LA. Focusing on functional fitness, Keith Hodges has literally ground his way up from homelessness to wellness. He has been featured in Forbes, Self, Huntington Post, and Cosmopolitan, just to name a few. But his greatest testimonial is myself. A few years ago, I tore my pectoral muscle and I couldn't lift things on the left side of my body. Nothing is more concerning than being out of work for 4 months. Keith helped me rehab and get back to a level of fitness that could continue my career. Nowadays, he helps me maintain with a level of pressure and accountability, which I'm grateful for. So I wanted to share some of his methods for living a meaningful life and the journey he's had on his path to being a successful entrepreneur. Keith, thanks for joining us on the Social Studies Show.
Thank you for having me.
Boom. All right. Okay, man. I think for me, something that's been really interesting on our journey is, we started out working out together, and part of the thing was like me helping you learn about media training and how to like market your business, and you helping me get back into shape so I could actually shoot photos and like continue with my job, because like for a while, man, I just thought I might have to quit because I was just permanently damaged. So it's interesting talking. I wanted to hear a little bit about advertising in the fitness industry from your perspective and how you've gone about on that path to market your business in this time and age.
Well, I remember when we started, I was not a fan of social media, and you were like, it's not going anywhere. It's here to stay. So you got to get with the program because this is where every industry is going. So starting off, I was able to help you. You gave me an opportunity, and you mentored me with social media. And then not just that, just helped me with things from marketing with my business, from how people perceive me. So I remember you was like, look, you're a coach. When you have clients, have a towel in hand, have your stopwatch out, do things to separate you, because you said, look at everybody in here. They are marketing themselves. They are walking billboards. And you said, so you don't have a big social media following, what is going to set you apart? So you started teaching me, the important aspects of marketing. And I've been fortunate enough to get a little momentum and transfer that over to social media. So I definitely want to thank you for that.
Oh, yeah, I'd appreciate that. And I think something that was really interesting and kind of like looking at that and like where you've taken what I've taught you and then kind of like run with it is there's like kind of that explosion of kind of like eye candy kind of fitness level of like, check me out, check out my body, check out how it's going with that. And for a while, like it was interesting because you kind of dove into that and we took photos to kind of show that kind of representation of you, because like honestly, the best testimony is the trainer themselves of like, I'm living healthy, right? But I think what's been really interesting to me is watching how you've used procedure of how you're doing exercises and what is actually training as far as fitness goes. And to me, that's actually more of an authentic way of like looking at training, but you've implemented that into your social media. So it's kind of like taking that thing and pushing a little further. So I just want to know how you kind of came to that.
It was just a matter of trying to figure it out. In Los Angeles, this is a place where, look at me, my body, and that is your biggest form of marketing. So I tried that. And you just had to look at pretty much, the competition in the environment. I'm somebody new to social media. And if I go this route with marketing my body and, look at me, I'm up against, who's who on social media, people with millions of followers, or I can do what I'm good at. And what I can do is I can coach, I can adapt my philosophies to help people reach their goal. And I just started marketing that. It went from, okay, this is not me. I'm not the best at that. So it would take years and years of modeling and camera work, or I can just start applying what I've been doing for years to social media. And that's what helps. So showing people that, hey, I work with real people. I can coach, I can articulate, I can help people reach their goal is what helped me the most. And people saw that because it wasn't as superficial as what they would see on social media.
So there's two things in that, and I think that's something that really kind of talks about, and I think this is something that really addressing as far as advertising and looks, is a few years back, there was the internet celebrity Jen Selter who basically kind of made a whole living of just kind of like showing, checking out my body, this like that. And to set the stage, she started coming out with this fitness program. And what happened is actual trainers were kind of like, well, are you certified? How do you know about going about doing this? And each people's bodies are different. Not everyone's going to have a body like yours. So are you qualified to be able to do an assessment on these people and then show them a path towards fitness and nutrition? And I think that's something that I really like you to speak on, because not everyone who necessarily has a body, like sometimes it can be genes or being able to diagnose a person's program or the elements of what they're dealing with, and then be able to assess and then give them a program or rollout to help them on the path to journey of rehab.
Yeah. So first and foremost, you got to have the education. I learned from people who weren't certified, but they have been training and weightlifting for 20 plus years. So moving here, I moved here to work in a corporate fitness setting. And one of the first requirements was, do you have a degree? Do you have certifications? Now I left the corporate fitness scene and come to training, and in the training industry, there are other trainers, and to get in rooms, to be able to network, to rub elbows with other people in the industry, you have to be qualified. So that's something that has helped me, is having the education and be able to adapt. And sometimes people will pull your cards. What are your credentials? People would set you apart as you're not just a guy who just goes and takes pictures. You have a degree, you went to college, here is my resume. I can walk the talk, I can talk the talk. So that's what helped me. So, what was the question about?
I mean, it's just basically getting into advertising, and I think just how you've kind of elaborated on that, because I think this is where it actually comes full circle in that part, right? Because you've been so well at documenting your functional fitness. Now it's funny because you recently just did a piece with Conor McGregor on one of his training platforms. So tell us a little bit about that, because obviously seeing what you're doing with functional fitness, but then that becomes applicable in marketing now.
Yeah. Well, ironically, that came out of nowhere. I was just working out at the gym with a rooftop, and someone happened to come across my page. So going back to what you taught me, social media, you never know who's watching, you know what I mean? So had I been stuck in my ways and just said, the hell with social media, I would have never been given an opportunity. So they saw me training and asked if I'd like to be a part of the program, and the rest is history.
So it's kind of funny how just kind of like those little steps, it's kind of not necessarily like one of those things of you're going to have this viral moment of fitness thing of that. It's just building that foundation over time right there, but also backing it up with results,
Yeah.
right? And actual groundwork on this will lead you to that, and showing people the path of fitness, which I think something that we were kind of talking about is as far as marketing and healthy living. Something that you really brought and honed into me was nutrition. And something we talk about and discuss quite a bit is how healthy living isn't necessarily marketed to low income communities. So I'd love to hear your take on that.
It's not. So I started with nutrition. I went to the doctor at 19 or 20, and the doctor pretty much said, well, you're going to have high blood pressure. And I'm like, well, why? I'm like, is my blood pressure high now? He's like, no. And I was like, well, I don't understand. He just said, well, you have a family history of it, and, your race. And, it wasn't from a racist standpoint. He was just saying, these are the statistics. And I didn't understand that. So I looked at him and I said, well, I don't really have a family history of having good credit. I don't have a family history of having college degrees. And I said, so what does that mean? And he was like, I don't, quite get where you're going. I'm saying, well, I don't feel like that, because that runs in my family, that I have to have that happen to myself. And then from there, I started researching high blood pressure, and I looked to when it started to grow in America in the lower income communities, and it was the advent of fast food restaurants. It was weird that we have all the technology that we have, all these multi-million-dollar fitness facilities, but our lifespans are going down and we're not healthy. So how is it that we have more technology, more technological advances, but we have higher blood pressure? It doesn't make sense. Where when we had less, our blood pressures were lower, our lifespans were longer. So I looked at it, and what happened was we had healthier food sources, and we were more active. So technology is good, but what technology also has done to us is it's made us lazier by making things a little more convenient. So that's where I started researching nutrition, et cetera, et cetera. And what I learned was that it not necessarily that it runs in my family. We just weren't practicing good eating habits in the family.
So deeper in that, as far as nutrition goes, and something that I talked about that was relative and was interesting to know, is how that affects your fitness. How what you eat can lead to inflammation, how a lack of sleep can affect weight gain. And so that's something I'd love to hear you kind of talk about, and how we can actually use, more tools today to actually market and tell people about this with the tools, and how marketing and this can move that forward to help educate diverse communities.
For sure. I think that we need to make being healthy cool in the Black community. We don't necessarily market that. Even during the pandemic, we marketed Black entrepreneur, start your own business. We never marketed, or I didn't see a lot of, hey, take care of your body, healthy eating. So we need to start from an educational standpoint. And as far as fitness, bad food causes inflammation in the joints. You want to go a mental health aspect, they're putting hormones in the food. And when we intake those hormones, that can affect our bodies and our mind by causing chemical imbalances. So it's not just important to eat healthy just for a physical standpoint, but we have no idea what these hormones are doing to us from a mental standpoint. If they're giving cows or chickens steroids to make them grow at a faster rate, we're putting those same toxins inside our bodies. So from a sleep aspect, that can disturb sleep. We have days where we wake up and everything is clicking. We should look at the day before. What do we eat? What do we drink? How much sleep did we get? How we feel the next day is usually contingent on what we put in our bodies and what we did the night before. We look at it like, a vehicle. If you put good gas in your vehicle, your car's going to run good. You put great gas in your vehicle, your car's going to run great. You take care of your body's going to take care of you. So we need to make that cool in our community. We don't need multi-million-dollar fitness facilities. It's free to go for a walk. We don't make the time to do it.
So I think it's like one and two things that come out of that, right? It's one, invest in the body and the food that you're trying to put in yourself, and also invest in the time to actually look at that, because there are benefits of that, of health and mental health. And so those are two things that kind of like the takeaways that I get from that, and just something I think is very helpful. One, as far as looking at the audience generally, but also looking at how we can market that within our communities in a better way, so people become more aware as far as how that's going. So
Yeah. I think that we've had great marketing as far as, how many of us do you know are on high blood pressure medication?
None I know of.
You don't know any? Oh, I know a lot. It's pretty prevalent. High blood pressure, diabetes, it runs rampant in our community. And from what I've seen is, when it comes to Black people, we don't make a change until we go to the doctor and get bad news.
So you're more about talking about just implementing it into the lifestyle.
Yeah, preventative maintenance. Why do we have to go to the doctor and get very bad information for us to finally realize, from being on this earth as an adult, that I need to do better. I need to take care of my body. We speak of generational wealth, having, money to pass down to our lineage. Well, you got to be alive to do that.
For sure.
Seriously.
Facts.
You got to be alive.
Okay, so this takes us into a little bit more of like, let's hear a little bit more about your philosophy as far as like, you're saying like your principle in training is a parallel to life, and that your brains are the strongest or the weakest link, depending on how we condition it. So tell me how you've come to that philosophy, and like where you see that output and going, and like what are the benefits of that?
Well, I used to be a big skeptic, and it was the whole, I'll believe it when I see it. Yeah, whatever. And things got harder in life, moving here, getting adjusted from like sleeping in my car, et cetera, et cetera. My plan A through D failing, and it's like, okay, this isn't working. Like, I don't believe anything because I'm not seeing anything. Like, nothing is going right. So then I hit a wall and said, all right, I have to go back to the drawing board. Something has to change. And, I started believing, and then I started seeing. So those are the two types of people in the world. You get those who are pessimistic and skeptic, and like, yeah, I believe when I see it. Then you have those who say, you know what, I'm going to believe it and I will see it. And those are people who are optimistic, and they may or may not reach their goals. What they did, the one thing they had control over was they went out and they tried. They were grateful. They put good energy out in the universe. If you're religious, they prayed, but they were more so had something to believe in positive, and they moved that way. And usually, this world or the universe, whatever you believe in, responds to it. And that's what happened to me. So like, your mind is the strongest muscle, and you can train it or you can't train it. And it's just that simple. And same thing in the gym. If we have a goal, and I can direct your mind to the area or that muscle group we're trying to develop to get a stimulus or an outcome, you can connect your mind to that area we're trying to work. And it's the same thing in life. Like, you're here today because you believed it and you worked on it.
So I think another interesting takeaway from that too is like, when you list all your A, B, C, D plans that all failed, right, is like something people don't talk about is sometimes the path of failure leads you to success. And I think that's something that I really would like to talk to you about and go into the next question, because you're an entrepreneur, you're sitting here in LA, one of the toughest markets to ever to succeed in. And as you're getting your business thriving, the pandemic happens. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about the challenge of being a Black business owner and the pandemic shuttering gyms and like how you went about and survived that.
The pandemic was interesting. So just some backstory. In Indiana, I was a general manager of a fitness franchise. I was the only Black and the youngest general manager. And I came to work one day and they closed. Had no job. That's when I started training.
Okay.
And that was like my last year of college. So I had no income. So it's like, okay, I have to adapt. So then I started going house to house, and then I was able to survive. So fast forward, the gyms closed, we're in the pandemic, and I'm like, all right, I've been there before. I have to get to it. I was fortunate to have clients that wanted to stick with me and say, hey, gyms are closed, but if you have equipment and you want to come here, or we'll meet you at a park. And, I was able to stay in motion. And then from there, people saw that I was still active in business and it grew from there. So I was fortunate. So it was just really adaptability and then staying calm. And to be honest, I wasn't necessarily worried about work over the pandemic. It was worried about other stuff during that point in time. So
Yeah, no, I mean, like dying, that's a bad thing.
But I was fortunate. The business grew and it just wasn't a time to complain. We were there. These are the circumstances. You adapt. You either sink or you fail. And it was that simple. I cannot go back to Indiana. So I have to make this shit work one way or another.
Well, I mean, I think that's what kind of like brings me out. And honestly, kind of like one of the things I really have been like loving about getting to know you and working with you is like talking about work ethic, right? Because you've had like such a strange journey of like, and you were talking to me about like, working at Starbucks, being homeless, working at corporate fitness and not quite working out, and then the pandemic. And so like, you've had this roller coaster, right? And so for me, like, I'd like to hear a little bit about like kind of like that journey, because like I know when you first came out here, like you were staying with a friend, but then you had to kind of just like kind of dip and just kind of like were in your car, just kind of like figuring it out. So,
Yeah.
but you just stayed with it, and like, and LA has that. It has that thing where it's really easy to get into that groove of like homelessness and like blaming other people kind of a scenario. So I think let's talk a little bit about how you like took that and channeled it and made it stronger and actually grow from that experience.
It was really a test, and it was mostly God during that time because I was in school and I'm doing everything right. I have a 4.2 GPA. I'm supposed to be staying with friends, and things don't work out. I quit my corporate job. I'm Ubering. And things didn't work out, and the next thing I know, I have no place to live. Now it took being stubborn and maybe prideful, but it was like, all right, well, I'm ashamed, I'm embarrassed, but I'm not gonna call home.
Yeah,
I'm
no.
not gonna tell them what I'm doing or how I'm living, because I don't want them to say, come back home. I don't need that energy. I'm gonna figure it out. And I don't want to give people the satisfaction of saying, we told you in over your head. So I stayed with it. I woke up angry every day. So I would wake up in the morning, pissed off, and I would go to school. So we'll go to class. I would shower at the gym that we had access to. They provided us with instant oatmeal and Nutri-Grain bars. So that's how I survived. So I would, I guess, steal instant oatmeal boxes and Nutri-Grain boxes. I had no money. We got coffee, and luckily for coffee, it's an appetite suppressant. So I drank a lot of that, so I wouldn't be hungry because I didn't have any money to eat. and it was crazy, and things worked out. But what happened was, while during this time, I'm mad at the world. I'm angry because I'm just like, what the fuck?
Like, why is this happening?
Why is this happening to me? I'm not partying. I'm not doing anything I'm not supposed to. I have a 4.2 GPA. I followed my heart. I came here. I'm doing everything right. How is this happening to me? And it's like, one day it dawned on me. It was like, well, who are you, or why do you think this is above you, or this shouldn't happen. Why are you above this, should I say? And it's like, well, clearly it's supposed to be happening to you. And then that's when I came face to face with entitlement, and it's like, all right, well, no matter how mad I'm going to be, no matter how frustrated, how mad at the world I'm going to be, I'm still in the same situation. So what I did is I found some like motivational videos on YouTube. It's 3 videos that I'll still to this day watch. So I woke up every day, I would watch those videos, and then I would drive to the gym, shower, and get my day started. And then from there, it was like, all right, well, I'm starting to feel a little bit better. The circumstances are still the same, but I'm feeling a little better how I'm maneuvering in this fucked up situation. So it got better. I started to feel better mentally, like, all right, and I started to be grateful because it's like, all right, you know what? I can look at it like, all right, damn, this is messed up. I hate that I'm living in this situation. I should not be sleeping in my car. And it is what it is. Or I can say, you know what? This situation isn't the best, but, thank God I have a car to sleep in and I have money for gas. And I can leave it running at night so I can stay warm.
You're still alive and breathing.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people, like, you take that for granted. Like, and that's like, not to take away, but something like I do when I'm getting in those moods sometimes like that. When I wake up, I'll make a list, like as soon as I open my eyes, of 10 things that I'm grateful for.
Yeah.
And that totally changes the way that you start your day. And whenever I'm feeling down and think of that, I will list those 10 things and I just think about those things. And, and it puts me in a better mindset. But
Yeah.
anyway, continue.
And it's funny how like lessons we learn or things we've been told later, like early in life, how we don't get it till later or it comes to fruition later. Because when I was in Indy and I would tell my mother, I want a new car. Like we would see people with the old school and I'm like, I want a new car. I want a nice car. She's like, well, you don't take care of the car you have. So why do you think God would bless you with another car? And it wasn't until I moved here where that made sense. Because I would always say, well, what does one have to do with the other? Like, I don't have to take care of this car to want a new one. But I didn't understand the lesson was I had to be grateful for what I had and take care of what I had. So it wasn't until then when I started, being grateful and disciplining myself to see the good in things in spite of. It's like, all right, well, like I said, I don't have any money to get a hotel room and I'm sleeping in my car. But you know what? Thank God I have money for gas, leave this car running. I can sleep here. I have a place to shower. And after class, I'll go Uber, and I have a way to make some income. And then things got better, eventually. But it was that disciplining myself to be grateful in spite of. And I think since then, that's what's been probably one of the most important lessons that I've taken in business is, be grateful and you keep moving forward.
Well, I think the other thing too that's really interesting in that and looking at it's like leading by example and seeing people seeing how you work, right? And networking, right? And so it's interesting when people see that, and because I'm curious, it's like, so how'd you get out of that? Like what happened was the next step to kind of push you and get you to a home and to working at the factory where I met you, and then on, and now having your own private business.
Yeah, I was able to stay in a hotel for a little bit, and I got a call one day from a place called Neuromuscular Therapy. And it was a company that was renting a room at the factory. And, I was doing this, using this technology that I'll start doing here again soon. But it was neuromuscular re-education. And this company had this machine where we can pinpoint injuries. And it was cool because you can bounce back from injuries faster because the technology allowed us to see what was causing the injury versus treating what was injured. Now, the technology was very expensive and the company went under. But what happened was I was in the factory and I met a gentleman that was, the head strength and conditioning coach. From there, I interned and then they offered me a job. And then things grew from there. So it was just slowly but surely, and the whole time not seeing it, feeling my way around in the dark, but moving forward, and then just saying, hey, I'm still mad, still having to discipline myself to be grateful because that was an ongoing process. It wasn't like an overnight thing. I'm learning on the job of life and, just maneuvering through and, doors open. And it's funny because, I'm don't always come off as super social or stuff like that, but I'm always grateful and I'm always paying attention to other people. So, going out, networking with the right people, not a lot of people, I was offered more opportunity And then from there, I met people, left the factory, and I ended up coming over the hill and working for myself.
Yeah, well, it's like funny because they always say the quote is like your network is your net worth, and so like just being able to grow that and put yourself in those positions.
Yeah.
And I think just interesting, even how we met is like those scouting your gym to do a shoot for this other model, and it's funny because you and I ended up getting friends, and then exploding from there of just us taking photos and creating that stuff there, and just steps beyond, right? And so it's like it's really interesting watching that journey, looking back at it now, and I mean, again, I really probably would be sitting here working if it like wasn't for you, and I don't think people really understand like how disabled I was.
Yeah, I didn't
Like,
even realize it until later.
yeah, so it's a crazy thing to kind of like work through that, and just like having that of like just my own like health of trying to like mentally being like, am I going to lose my job, and having someone help you get through that, right? And so seeing now and just having that joy and like obviously being in a better place, like what are some of the joys and successes that you're feeling now, and like what are some advice you'd give your younger self now, kind of looking at that journey, in the rear view, and like how would you be like, okay, Keith, I'd help you navigate here and there.
Some of the joys and successes that I see is that when I started at the factory, like I had my, my education and my few certifications, and I practiced what I knew, and I practiced and I practiced and I practiced, and I got good. And then people, hey, what certifications do I have to get to learn this stuff that you learned? And I'm like, honestly, I took, a little from a lot, and, I just practiced, honestly. And but I remember at the time, my particular training was looked at as circus act training, or it was talked about by other people in the industry. So you fast forward, the joy of mine is that now that I look at the industry, all that shit looks familiar.
Well, I think here's the other thing too, and like that's something where like I've been shooting fitness for a long time. I've been around a lot of different trainers, um, like especially being in New York, a lot of like celebrity fitness trainers, and same thing with LA. And the one thing that you do better than anyone else I've ever seen in my life, right, is your ability to diagnose something from me. Like when I come in and I'm like, hey, Keith, this is hurting, or this kind of is creating me pain, or that, and be like, literally, like you're like 30 seconds, you're like, try this, and this, right?
Yeah.
And so that ability to be able to diagnose, and I think that's something where you're like, you don't get that from looking at all these people's Instagram pages and all their different followers, is how can they diagnose a person who's coming in with an ailment, or actually wants to set a goal that's different,
Yeah.
and then put them on a path, because every person is different. It's not something you can just like, oh, I'm going to work on this and kind of like figure that out. It's
Yeah.
something where like it's like an inherent gift, right? And so that's the really interesting thing of like you having this inherent gift to be able to help people, and like that is like a crazy, unfathomable thing. It's something I've never seen in the fitness industry to this day.
That came from practice too. But I was blessed with like a creative mind, and I can think fast. But mostly it comes from being coachable. I allow the feedback you're giving me from a movement that I prescribe you to do. And you say, okay, I feel this here. And I take that feedback and you say, all right, well, and I say, well, try this. And I say, all right, well, what feels better? Does it feel better if we do it this way? What are you feeling? This direction, this direction. So we're just trying a bunch of different ways, and I'm using the feedback that people give me to, like we said, get that certain stimulus. So legally, I can't diagnose because I'm a doctor, but I can prescribe exercise. So, but for the most part, it's just using the feedback people give me and trying. So we have all these like degrees of freedom, and we want to move around freely. So that's how we try and train. So we get stuck in like one mode. So let's say we're doing a squat. The textbook says legs shoulder width apart, et cetera, et cetera. All right, well, if you feel something uncomfortable doing the shoulder width apart, all right, well, let's try it going a little bit wider. Now what do you feel? All right, let's stagger our stance. So it's just really, letting people coach me about what they feel and adapting to, make them, get a better outcome or feel better on a day-to-day basis for the most part.
Okay, so I got a last question for you. What's your greatest success story?
That's tough. My greatest success story was making a decision to move to California in the midst of uncertainty.
All right, I can rock with that.
Yeah,
All
I
right,
think
man.
that was. I can move anywhere now and make it, and I wouldn't have felt that way until I made the decision to come out here and struggle. So that's my greatest success story.
That's awesome, man. Well, Keith, thanks for joining us on the Social Studies Show.
Appreciate it.
If you are looking for someone to help you get in shape or rehabilitate or thing like that, this is your guy, and that's it, man. Thank you.